I want to tell you guys about my best friend, Brian. I just moved to Pennsylvania and I was in middle school and I was at church and we had a special guest. And this special guest, his name was Getty the Gecko. It was a grown man dressed in a gecko outfit that would put water in his mouth and spit water on children and yell, "Agua, agua, agua." It was one of the weirdest things I've experienced in my life. And there were only two middle schoolers. It was me and this guy, Brian. So of course, naturally, we hung out. What a weird way to meet your best friend. And I mean, Brian and I have been best friends ever since. Like, we've been inseparable. We were roommates together in college. He was in my wedding. We've traveled overseas to tell people about Jesus. And one of the craziest things that we've done together is we rode our bicycles from Florida to Maine. I mean, I love this guy. He's my best friend. So this morning, that's what we're gonna talk about. The love you have for your friend. And in English, we only have one word for love, and we use it for everything. But the Bible wasn't written in English. It was written in Greek. And actually, there's 4 different words to describe all the different kind of love we have. Last week, we talked about the word agape. And it's a word we see most commonly used in the Bible. And it's the love that is self-sacrificial, that's working on the benefit for other people. And even the love we're supposed to have for our enemies. This is the most extreme, great kind of love you can have. In fact, this is the love Jesus has for us. But today, we're gonna look at a different word that the Bible uses for love. It's the word Philia. This is the word that we use when we say, "I love my best friend." Did you know that Jesus had best friends? I don't know if you have a best friend right now, or maybe you've had a best friend in the past. And sometimes interests change, people move away. That transition from elementary school to middle school or middle school to high school can be really hard, and sometimes you lose a best friend. Man, I hope that you experience the love that you're able to have for a best friend. See, Jesus, he had 12 friends. Can you imagine having 12 really close friends? But inside that 12, Jesus had 3 friends that he would say were his best friends. One of those guys' his name was Peter. You see, Peter followed Jesus and lived with him for 3 years, walked with him, ate with him, saw Jesus do all of these miracles. But just like a friendship you may have, friendships are a little rocky sometimes. Sometimes you do something that hurts your best friend. And Peter did something that hurt Jesus. You see, after 3 years together, Jesus was wrongfully accused of something he didn't do and was arrested. This scared Peter. And so what Peter did is that he followed Jesus from a distance. There were some other people following Jesus to see what was gonna happen to him. And so Peter was in a crowd and someone looked over and saw him and recognized him. Went up to him and said, "Hey, aren't you Peter? Aren't you Jesus's best friend?" And Peter said, "No, that's not me. I don't even know the guy." Can you imagine your best friend denying that they were your friend? Like, how much would that hurt? Peter didn't deny Jesus once. He didn't deny him twice. He denied him 3 times. After this, Jesus was wrongfully accused and he was put to death on a cross. Jesus was dead 3 days, but he rose from the dead. And after he rose from the dead, he went to go find his best friend. So Peter was out on the sea and he was fishing, and he looked out on the shore and saw a man. And the man yelled out to him, "Throw your nets on the other side." So Peter grabbed his nets and threw it on the other side of the boat, and miraculously, those nets were filled with fish. This wasn't the first time this situation happened to Peter. When Peter first met Jesus, the same thing happened, and Peter knew that it was Jesus on the shore. Out of excitement, Peter leaped out of the boat and swam and raced to the shore to see his best friend Jesus that had just risen from the dead. There's this interesting interaction that we see between Jesus and Peter. Peter had just denied knowing Jesus, and now his best friend was alive. Let's check out this interaction that they have in John chapter 21. It says, "After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?' 'Yes, Lord,' Peter replied. 'You know I love you.' 'Then feed my lambs,' Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I love you." "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. A third time he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt that Jesus asked him the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know I love you." Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." 3 times we see an interaction between two best friends, and Jesus is asking Peter, "Do you love me?" But the thing that we don't see in our English translation is this word love that Jesus uses, he switches from agape to philia. See, the first 2 times he says, "Do you agape me?" Jesus was reminding Peter what he had just done on the cross was an act of love. And Jesus did it for Peter and for everyone. But then the third time, he switches to that word philia, that word that he uses of loving a best friend. See, what Jesus wanted Peter to know is even in the midst of conflict, even in the midst of when Peter denied even being Jesus' best friend, Jesus still wanted to be a best friend with Peter. He loved him with a philia love. See, I told you the story about me and Brian earlier, and it may have sounded like we have the perfect friendship, but honestly, are any friendships perfect? Like, Brian is my best friend and I love him, but there are times I did things that hurt Brian and there are things that Brian did that hurt me. But this love that Jesus is talking about is the love that I have for Brian, my best friend, and I wasn't gonna let those things ruin our friendship. But how about you? What kind of friend are you? Jesus modeled for us the kind of friend we should be, ones that easily forgive and move on because of the love we have for the friend. Jesus modeled for us that kind of love. Now go and love your friend this week.